Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, How Racking and Mounting Makes Perfect Sense, and Dollars Too, brought to you by Solar Power World magazine. I'm Frank Andorka, Editorial Director of Solar Power World, and I will be your moderator today. We would like to thank Heticon Solar, Equilibrium Solar, and DPW Solar for their sponsorship of this webinar. Our speakers today are Brian Wild of Equilibrium Solar, Bill Vietas of RBI Solar, and Adam Brusha of Heticon Solar, and they will help you figure out how the racking and mounting system you choose can save you money and increase your profit margins. Just a couple of housekeeping details before we get started. If you wish to tweet about this webinar anytime during or after, you can use the hashtag #SolarWebinar. We love social media, and we hope you do too. You can follow us at Solar Power World or me at SolarFrankA. We will have a Q&A session after the presentations. Go ahead and submit your questions, and then we will ask them after all the presenters are finished. Questions can be asked using the GoToWebinar on your screen. Our presenters today include Brian Wild. He is the founder of Equilibrium Solar and possesses a strong background in the solar industry, plastics, engineering design, and product launches. Mr. Wild holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech and is a NABCEP certified PV installer. Bill Vietas has been part of the RBI Solar team for the past 16 years. His initial role at RBI included responsibilities of estimating, design, and project management, but for the last 3 years, Vietas has led the RBI Solar as the general manager. Vietas holds a bachelor's degree in engineering. And Adam Brusha is the regional sales manager for Heticon Solar and is based out of Northern California. He covers the Northwest Territory of the United States. His background has been in the construction industry, which was a natural precursor to solar, and he has been involved in solar for the last 4 years. To date, he has been involved with around 100 megawatts of sales and installation. Once again, presenters will be available to answer questions after the presentations. And without further ado, I will hand the mic over to Brian Wild. Brian?
Great. Thanks so much for the introduction, Frank. Again, my name is Brian Wild from Equilibrium Solar. As Frank alluded to, I've spent the last 15 years focused on product development. It's always been my passion. You know, I've been involved with R&D through various design phases, all the way up in including product launches. I've always been intrigued by the far-reaching benefits of a great design. You know, whenever I see an elegant design that's simple, intuitive, it just makes me smile because it solves so many problems. I've designed, launched exterior plastic parts at General Motors, and I've learned through the years that the key to a good design is at the very beginning. It's when you identify what the decision maker really wants. And only when you understand that can all your efforts after that bear fruit and result in a great product. Right now in solar, the general industry goal is pretty simple. It's to achieve grid parity, as you all know. And we all believe that when grid parity is reached, which means the price per kilowatt hour of solar is less than the price per kilowatt hour of traditional energy. When that is reached, we will all have an abundance of work and a healthy and sustainable world to live in. So that's the overall goal of solar, and focus specifically on mounting systems. That leads me to the belief that I hold that a good mounting system design keeps in mind that the decision maker wants one thing. He wants a product with the lowest life cycle cost. And I've heard objections like, well, I'm an installer and I care about more than cost. I care about quality. I care about service. I care about install speeds, etc. And I submit to you that all these things you installers care about have a cost component, and that's why you care about them. Quality, for example, is paramount. because callbacks can quickly eliminate profits on a job. If you partner with a solar manufacturer that provides good service, this reduces the project design time, specifications, permitting, etc. Makes the project go much smoother. Materials arrive on the job site when you want them, where you want them, avoiding project delays. And all these great benefits of good service really impact your bottom line. That's why you care about it. Install speeds as well is easy to see. A job that's deployed fast, lets you get in and on and off the job quickly, saves you money. And so what I'd like to go over in this presentation is various design attributes that mounting manufacturers look at to help you to reduce the total cost of ownership. I'm going to focus on the commercial space, even though a lot of these design attributes apply also to residential and utility systems. The first and most important design attribute of a great mounting system is keeping the part count low. I can't emphasize this enough. A simple, elegant design solves so many problems. With a design which has a low part count, it's easy to lay the system out. It's easy to create bill of materials, order the system, handle the components. Also, direct labor costs are saved because quite often mounting systems with a low part count are the same ones that go in fast. So low part count, in summary, reduces the total cost of ownership. Now, this can be achieved either by a very simple, elegant design. It also can be achieved by pre-assembling at the manufacturing plant so that installers have less part numbers to deal with. Integrated grounding is a close second. It's become a must-have, not nice-to-have attribute. Direct costs plus the time it takes to install ground lugs and lay copper wire is thought to add 3 to 6 cents per watt to a job. And with jobs being as tight as they are, this is no longer acceptable. Of course, a design which has few or no tools helps you get it down fast with less confusion. Well, the fourth item here is ballast, and it's primarily about commercial ballasted systems. We try very hard to reduce the number of ballast blocks you need on a job because, of course, they have an element of cost to the ballast, but also it takes time to deploy that ballast, and both of which impact your bottom line. So we do things like create a more aerodynamic system, which involves designing wind deflectors that are aerodynamic, having spaces which relieve pressure, uplift pressures, etc. There's some systems which also have ballast built into the system, a very great way to reduce the part count. Other design considerations are modularity. I feel passionate about this design consideration because it impacts so much. Modularity is when the design either doesn't include rails or the rails don't extend beyond any one module, so that each panel can be conceived of as a building block, and you can build an array any which way you want. It allows your array to flow around roof obstructions. And it also allows the array to adhere to the roof undulations, because we say in commercial racking there's no such thing as a flat roof. Every roof has a pitch, and most have multiple pitches. And a modular system will flow over those pitch changes without any thought needed, versus using shims or cutting rails where the peaks and valleys are. Modularity also allows you to do last-minute layout changes. If you have, we've all been on the job first day, staring at a roof vent that's not on the drawing. And when you have a modular system, you can take that module, put it somewhere else on the roof using the same parts you have, and not having to wait for the custom parts to arrive. So I'm passionate about the modularity. Also, roof-friendly features are very important, which means the system must be safe on the roof, and it also must not block drainage. So to make it safe on the roof, we do things like make sure any metal doesn't have sharp corners or burrs, and of course, once the system is deployed, make sure that there's a slip sheet or pad underneath the system to keep it from abrading the roof membrane. And then drainage, keeping rails off of the roof itself that might block roof drainage. It's been said that 80% of all construction lawsuits tie back to water intrusion, and the roof, of course, comes to mind. So we have to always remember that the roof has one primary function, and that's to keep the elements out of the building. So we have to respect that. Validation is not necessarily a design attribute, but something that's very important to help you get your project built. You can't make money if a project stalls. And that means if you have a lot of validation behind a system, then it's a bankable system that you can get financing with. It's also a system that's likely to get a permit. So it's very important to ask questions about how much validation exists on a given system. Serviceability might have two main aspects within the mounting system design, and one of which is the longevity of the mounting system itself. We design systems to last 25 years in all elements without an installer having to go back and service it. That means choosing appropriate materials that are corrosion resistant, UV resistant. It also means bolting connections that have some kind of anti-backout feature, whether it's a split washer or what have you. It also means just making sure that there's no need to go back out to replace ballast block. You need to make sure that the ballast block have significant density, more than 3,000 psi, for example, density to be a freeze-thaw version, to make sure it doesn't fall apart and clog up your roof drains and cause replacement. So anyway, we've taken a lot of consideration to make sure that you don't have to maintain the mounting system, but also a good design has aisleways where you can easily access every panel in case you need to replace them or test them. The last item I want to touch on, just module compatibility. In this world where there's so many modules and they change so quickly, installers have their own favorites, and favorites change with time. And every project seems to have panels which change throughout the life of that project. Keep in mind that you need to work with a system that is universal enough to allow for installers to change their preferred panel. So, in summary, there's a lot of things we consider, a lot of design attributes we consider when designing a mounting system, but I feel that all these design attributes really lead back to cost, the total life cycle cost of your product, and that's what it's all about. Now I wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of great systems on the market today, and many more systems today than there were just 3 years ago. And a lot of these new systems have a lot of these attributes that I'm talking about. So there's no shortage in great designs on the market. I wanted to highlight a few good designs. This is by no means the only good designs on the market, but it's a few that exemplify the attributes I'm talking about. The first one is Panel Claw's Grizzly Bear. This is a system with a very low part count. It's really an elegant design because it includes the ballast within the system, which makes it, of course, a lower cost when you don't buy the ballast separately, but also helps you to carry the ballast around. Installers like that feature. They also like the modularity of the Grizzly Bear and how it flows over the roof undulations. AET's Rayport also is a very modular system. I also want to point out that it's universal. Works with pretty much any panel. Equilibrium Solar's EcoFoot 2 combines the benefits of polymers, which are low direct material cost and its roof-friendly nature. But it combines these benefits with integrated grounding, which installers must have these days. It's a feature you often only get with metal mounting systems. The SunLink finally has been around for a long time. There's a lot of validation behind it. It's known to be a bankable product, very easy to get permits with. And with all the validation comes lower number of ballasts, lower number of attachments, helping you to save money. So I thank you for your time. I just want to reiterate that we care about what you care about. We care about lowering the cost of your project, and that means a lot of different design features are considered when we bring a product to market. Thank you for your time. Frank, I'll let you take it over.
Thanks, Brian. We really appreciated your thoughts and insights. Now I'd like to introduce Bill Vietas from RBI Solar. Bill?
Thanks, Frank. This is Bill Vietas from RBI Solar, talking really about the ground mount installation and ground mount systems. So going to review, sorry about that. So going to review just ease of installation and how labor costs and the whole design can affect your ground mount system. All of these items together affect the total installed cost of a product or a project. So from building it up from the foundation and the design of the foundation, and then the pre-assembly of some of the parts, and then the quantity of posts that you have to pound in the ground, and then just understanding how the grounding goes, and then going into questions after that. So we'll start with the foundation. In general, multiple foundation options are available, and it's really a project-specific look that should be done based upon the soils data to get the right fit for the project. Driven posts are one option, screws and helical piles are another options, as well as concrete piers and micro piles. And we've found over time that driven posts from a utility scale standpoint is the least expensive cost in most projects, but not all soils can accept that, so then you have to look at other options as well. So just showing some different considerations on post driving. Each project comes with its own custom sites, and so engineering has to happen to look at those. So looking at racking that can support, whether it's a ballasted or up a hill or up a slope or whatever it's needed to be. So each project has to be designed and engineered for the specific location, the snow and wind loads, the topography, and the soil conditions of what you have. So trying to make an engineered to order system, but also that's designed for the specific location, and understanding the costs that go involved in that. Once the posts are in the ground, you are trying to reduce the number of quantity of parts available. So pre-assembling some parts will reduce the time to get the rack built. So pre-assembly can help lower the cost and increase the speed of a project. So you can see in the photo there some pre-assembly and then lay down of the parts. And then the rack can be built both quickly and efficiently from that standpoint, so you can move rather quickly across a project. Once the rack is built, you look at, or once the posts are done, you have a pre-assembled area here, and then you're just talking about laying down. So things that you have to look into is lay down areas, how you're going to stage a project, where all those parts are going to move to, and just understand the whole construction concept across that. And then after you have the materials, you start staging the modules out as far as from an installation standpoint. And this gives you just a larger view of staging more materials, and then finally getting the PV up there, which is what everybody's looking for. So going back again to the posts, trying to, from a design standpoint, look to see if you can reduce the number or the quantity of posts that you're looking for, and following grade are both ways of reducing costs and decreasing the installation time and decreasing the costs. So you can do that both, both from an engineering standpoint by increasing the rack member sizes, to be able to reduce the cost, and then just be able to follow the grade, which is what you can see across the photo on the right. And then, another item that we think is important is having one entity handle the entire racking project, from the posts to the rack itself, to the foundation design, and it reduces really the potential issues you might have during handoff from one step to another in a project. So if you have single source responsibility, you're able to reduce that time, increase efficiencies from one handoff to another. Another thing on ground mounts, because you're dealing with ground, is having enough construction tolerances built into the design so that you can readily be able to adjust in the field what you're doing. So construction tolerance is important. And then, like Brian talked about earlier, wire management and grounding is important to have to reduce those costs. So wire management, having wires integrated into the racking solution, and then grounding, whether you're looking for a UL 2703 classification for the local AHJ, and then reducing your number of your cost of electrical grounding. So here's just a couple photos of wire management and containing the wires and bringing them back to the combiner box, and then J hooks and G rings and other sources that you can do for wire management as well, to help to make it become integrated within the racking solution. So then, just looking at some jobs, projects that we've done, and challenges on a large job is really material coordination and labor coordination, and the quantity of people that are working, and making sure you have consistency across a project and lay down areas across a project. This photo I just threw in because it's pretty. And then this photo, this one you can't tell in the photo, but it actually slopes 10 to 15% to the north, which is just challenging from a material handling standpoint, as well as installing the posts correctly, and just the different things that you get with going through the ground. And then, as we all, projects in winter, just understanding the weather and how that hits the ground as far as delays and staging of materials and getting stuff caught in the snow. And then within ground comes landfills as well, so caps, penetrating, non-penetrating caps, and wind shear, wind velocity, those type of things, and equipment limitations of weights on the cap itself for landfill. So just understanding the soils that are involved in a project. And in this photo, all our access was on the right side of this photo, and so just understanding how you're going to deliver materials to the furthest point of the project. Moving materials, staging materials, limited laydown area, and being able to organize everything there. So thank you, Frank. Back to you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, good.
I wanted to thank you, Bill, for your informative presentation, and I'd like to introduce Adam Brescia from Hedicon Solar to bring us home. Adam? Hey, Adam, it's on mute. You're on mute. Adam, we can't hear you. You're on mute. We apologize. We are currently looking for Adam Brescia. Adam, if you're still online and you want to let us know you're still here, that would be great. While we're waiting for Adam to come back with us, I wanted to know if there are, that one of the questions we had from Aaron was, are there any concerns regarding the spread of fire on the flat rooftop systems? There are people who are starting to ask that question. There are customers who are starting to ask. So whoever wants to take that question and answer it would be great.
I can take a shot at it. Can you hear me, Frank?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, certainly there's a little more, there's more and more attention on flammability in the commercial flat roof space as we kind of learn more and more about the issue. 2703 has a carve-out for flammability, and it looks like they're still tweaking the final Class A testing, although I think the Class C is set in stone. Definitely, like I say, part of the 2703. It's something we're all want to make sure that the racking and mounting system and panels themselves don't increase the spread of flame. Something we're all conscious of, and I think as an industry we're learning how best to deal with it.
Thank you, Brian. So here's another question for you. What are the racking and mounting manufacturers doing to educate fire departments on that problem? I mean, I think that's one of the things that I keep hearing about is that we had the that they're asking for that kind of education. Whose responsibility is it to provide that kind of education? Is that on you guys, or is that who should be doing that education?
It's a good question, and maybe I don't have a great answer for it. I think it does go beyond our conversations with the AHJs. It's a higher level question, one that the panel 2703 is set to kind of address, as well as the fire departments themselves. California, of course, is known to set the pace there. So appreciate anybody else's expertise on who's leading that conversation.
Adam, are you back?
Yeah, this is Bill answering that question. I think it's
yeah, go ahead, Bill.
On everybody. It's on the racking company. It's on the EPC and the electrical designers, and just everybody working together to understand, how to best make the systems code compliant, limit the fire risk. I mean, it's everybody's involved and everybody's responsible.
So tell me, Bill, a little bit about your the importance of pre-assembly. How do you go about engineering something like that?
What you're trying to, how do you go about it? That's a good question. So what you're trying to do is reduce the number of parts, just like Brian's talked about. So you're reducing the quantity of parts that each person has to deal with, and then something that's easily transportable, so that you don't have to pay lots of freight to get it there as well. And then it's also in the field easily staged, so that when you're moving it from one section to another within a job, you don't have some special precautions that you need to do, or anything that's going to drive costs for that standpoint. So you take those all into consideration, and you try to keep it simple at the same time, because you're not you're not having scientists or installing this. You're having laborers installing it, as well as construction people, but not specialized people always. So you have to take all that in consideration as you build up the product, trying to understand what it is, but also make it structurally robust enough to withstand the loads that are put on it per project. So
absolutely. Brian, you want to answer that question too?
Well, I think Bill did a good job in that it's about a balance. For example, we could pre-assemble our whole system, but it wouldn't necessarily nest well. Therefore, it would cost a lot to transport and take up a lot of space on the job site. So it's a balance between having every part independently in a very tightly, densely packed box, versus the alternative that I described where you pre-assemble the whole thing. So I think it's really about striking that balance.
Well, that's one of the questions that I wanted to follow up on as well. You were talking about how the pre-assembly helps speed the project along. For the contractor, doesn't that, by its very nature, lower labor costs? And how do you think that's going to affect the overall price of a project? Either one of you can answer that. Sorry, I wasn't directing that at anybody in particular. Either of you can jump in and answer that.
Yeah, this is Bill. I'll take a first cut. It lowers the on the job time, which lowers your overhead as far as trailers, supervisors, superintendents of the job, and that it also can lower, depending upon how the financing's done and what payments and stuff like that. It can lower your cost to get a project going, so that's developing dollars for you. So it does lower the cost as far as that's concerned, overall.
Yeah, I can concur. I also want to add that, of course, there's the other end of it where it raises manufacturing costs. But I firmly believe that anything that you can do in the plant is more efficient than doing it in the field. In the manufacturing plant, it's a controlled environment. It goes faster at a higher quality control. We want to limit the amount of time the guys are in the field. It always saves money. So you want to pre-assemble as much as you can, still balancing, pack density.
Well, let me ask you about that, because that's, again, another hot issue in the industry, is the balance of system costs in terms of the manufacturing. And Brian, if I heard you correctly, what you were saying was that there are if you can do it in the factory, that lowers costs out in the field. What are the two of you looking at in terms of rationalizing your production processes and thereby lowering the overall cost on the racking itself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sold on pre-assembling, what we can. For example, the RBI system, I saw that pre-assembled unit. If you took it a step further and pre-installed the rails, as well as the north-south strut together, then you'd fit less in a truck, and you'd have more room. You'd need to stage materials. And likewise with our product, the EcoFoot itself, the polymer base, nests very nicely on a pallet. We can get 50 kW on a pallet, very easy to handle. But there is a certain point where, as we sub-assemble more and more onto that, it's less and less stackable. So that's what it really was about, is looking at every product system design and striking that balance.
Can either of you address, Marshall asks, can either of you address the importance of waterproof mounts? And so being in Cleveland, Ohio, the way I am, this, of course, is very important to me as I look out the window, and here on the 6th day of spring, we've got 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah, it's utmost importance for sure. It's the number one, that's the reason of having a roof. So respecting that the roofing membrane is first and foremost designed to protect your building from the elements. That we have to all be conscious of that. And with attachments, of course, that means making sure you're using the right flashing, the right methods, etc., that no leaks are going to happen, using more than just some butyl. And of course with ballast, that's also having responsibility that the ballast pans have some kind of a protection underneath them, and that suspension contraction is considered, so it's minimizing the sliding on the roof surface. It's just looking at many ways in which we can minimize the damage, and perhaps liability on a rooftop is very important. Yeah, you can't overemphasize that.
Brian, do you have any thoughts? I'm sorry, Bill. I'm sorry, Bill. Do you have any thoughts?
No, the only other thought is, a lot of flat roofs have the insurance company walk the roof before and afterwards the installation, from a liability standpoint.
Well, very good. Eric asks, what is the typical cost per watt to buy and build a ground mount racking system? Bill, I believe that's directed at you. And then what happens when the driven posts hit large boulders underground?
Okay, so two questions in one. So the first is hard because it depends on the module wattage. It depends upon the wind and snow load, whether you're building in Florida or California or Massachusetts and tilt, and all those play into consideration. So racking in general, I'd say for materials you're looking for anywhere from 20 to 30 cents a watt in general, but it's very specific to, again, each location, tilt, clearance, all those variables. And then the second question, if you're driving post and hitting a large boulder, your alternative at that point is to either drive a post, move over and drive a post and have the flexibility within the system to do it, or you have to drill down and do a spread footer or a concrete pier at that point if you have no other solution at that point. You can look at screws, but you try to look at the geotech report if you have it, or do a pull test so you can understand what's out there first, is the first step.
Hey, good afternoon, Frank. This is Adam. I just got signed back on. Can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, I can hear you all right, Adam. I was about to ask you to tell everybody that you were here, and we're very excited to have you back. So we're going to get back to Adam's presentation. I'd like to thank Bill and Brian for answering all of those questions while we were trying to get Adam back on the line. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Hedicon Solar's Adam Brescia.
Yeah, thanks so much, Frank, and sorry about that, everyone. Had a little technical difficulty. Well, I think this is a good sequence of events with Brian discussing mainly the commercial rooftop and Bill discussing the utility scale ground mount side of things. I'm going to spend my time today discussing more of the residential style pitch roof systems, and specifically the technical challenges of selecting a mounting solution for those. But I think, again, as both Brian and Bill discussed, these are scalable conversations and really can be used whether it's a pitch roof, a commercial rooftop, or a ground mount system. So with that being said, let's see if I can take control of my slides here. The basis of today's discussion is how does mounting system technology and manufacturer support lead directly to a satisfied end user and increased profit for the installers? And my point is going to be, if you choose the correct mounting technology that's backed by the best manufacturer support, you're going to get that end result you want, which is a satisfied end user. In today's market, there's so many different manufacturers out there that are popping up every day, promising the newest, fastest way to get the panels installed on the roof with a host of advantages. The reality is that often these unproven systems have hidden costs and delays that can directly affect your bottom line as an installer. So definitely take your time in selecting a system. Make sure that you're comfortable with not only the technology, but the manufacturer as well too. PV racking solution with the right mix of technology, engineering support, and availability is going to lead to that satisfied end customer. Now, to get this satisfied end customer, there's a couple things that the installer has to do. First of all, they've got to ensure that the system is going to perform as advertised. And one of the ways that installers are doing that to mitigate shade, for example, would be to use some sort of a microinverter or a DC optimizer. And when talking specifically about racking, you just want to make sure that the mounting system that you're selecting is going to be able to accept these types of technologies using standard hardware. It's definitely something that you want to keep an eye on. Now, on the aesthetic side of things, make sure that you're installing the systems as cleanly as possible, whether it be a rooftop or in the field for that matter. We're starting to see more installers on the rooftop, specifically on the residential side, use black anodized rails where visible and clamps as well too, and then filling in the rest of the rails that are not visible with like a mill finish system that's going to lower your cost but still give you that nice aesthetic appeal. The curb appeal, as people call it, that's going to be your best advertising. Along with this the aesthetics of the system, you're going to have to consider the longevity of itself. And that's where using an aluminum system can also benefit you. It's not going to rust or corrode if you're cutting rails in the field or anything like that to make the panels fit the way that you want them. And you're also going to want to consider not only a mounting system that's made out of a quality material that's not going to corrode, but as well as a cable management system that's alike. We're starting to see more AHJs here in the Bay Area where I am that are not allowing plastic cable ties anymore, for example. So we're seeing more manufacturers come up with aluminum or some type of steel cable management system that's going to stand the test of time of the system, that's going to keep you from coming out in the field and doing any type of warranty or repair work, at least on the system and the wiring harnesses itself. And that's going to help help your bottom line. Whoops, going a little fast there for the slides. Talking about the technology itself, when selecting a system, consider some of the large manufacturers that have been in the industry for a long time. They have the experience in the field and definitely have market-proven technology in a wide variety of areas that are going to be able to adapt to your particular situation. Specifically talking about adaptation to different climates. For example, California, I think, is a pretty good case. Here I'm sitting in the Central Valley. We have relatively low wind speeds with no snow. But as soon as we make our way to the east, getting into the Sierra Nevadas, we start seeing increased snow loads as well as wind speeds as well too. And selecting a mounting system that's going to be able to perform in both environments while not being overly engineered is going to be something to consider, and making sure you can find that right mix of capability, basically, and flexibility. Along with the design criteria that affects the rails themselves, selecting a system that's going to be modular and able to adapt to different types of roofs, whether it be a standoff or some type of L-foot or a tile hook for that matter. Making sure that you select a system that's going to be able to easily integrate into any of those types of roofs is going to be advantageous, so you don't have to change your system every time you have a new rooftop. When choosing a new system, there's always going to be a learning curve involved, but a quality system is going to be very fast to learn, and it's not going to take a whole lot of time. I mean, most mounting systems are fairly similar, at least with rails and clamps, and it's just about getting your hands on the product and trying it out and working through the little kinks in the beginning. Along with the learning curve, you've got inventory also to consider now. Choosing a system that has a low part count is definitely going to benefit you for the fact that you can keep less stock on hand that's going to be usable, whether you're using the clamps on a project now that have a thicker framed module and you go to a next project that has a thinner frame module. Having some sort of modular mounting system that's going to be able to adapt to those different changes is going to help lower your carrying costs and allow you to carry what you need at all times. So that's going to also benefit your bottom line as well. Trying to switch slides here, sorry about that. Engineering support, obviously, as everybody discussed today, is crucial, and you're going to want to pay a lot of attention to this. So what services are provided by the manufacturer is something you look for. On most people's websites or manufacturers' websites, you're going to have the assembly manuals as well as some animations that show you how the systems go together and are installed. Data sheets are also going to be able to help you out. These data sheets often include the section properties of the rails or the system itself. That's going to be able to help some type of outside engineer design system for you. There's also going to be span charts available with wet stamps that are included. Now, most manufacturers have these type of rail span charts available that have the wet stamps for all the solar-friendly states that are out there, and if they don't have the particular state stamped at the time, just contact your manufacturer and see if they can get that done for you. But along with this specific topic, I'd like to talk about best practice for a second during the engineering support discussion. And we're seeing more and more systems out there that are claiming they can span long distances and stuff like that. And you really want to pay attention to the actual project details itself. You want to start with the roof, see what type of load conditions your roof can handle, whether it's a commercial rooftop or a pitched rooftop. And really start with that being your design guideline and not the rail span itself. Just because a rail can span X amount of feet does not mean that the roof can take that. So making sure that you're using best practice is always something you want to consider when designing a project. Now, along with all this, there's enough information available on websites, but there's always extra questions that come up. And having an on-staff PE that's going to be able to answer your questions and give you the drawings and calculations you need when extra questions come up during permitting or RFIs in the field is definitely going to be something you want to make sure that the mounting system manufacturer has available to you, because that's going to be key to have in your back pocket when something comes up. Now, availability is also, obviously very crucial. A lot of the projects we're dealing with are happening on short timelines. It seems like more and more as the industry progresses, there's more projects happening, and we need to get the product out the door as fast as possible. And making sure that your distribution partner or your supplier has the parts that you need when you need them is obviously crucial. And using some type of modular system that's going to be able to adapt to different module size frames is going to help them keep the stock that you need in hand at all times, and it's going to be able to get your project delivered, on time and under budget. Now, with that being said, also having multiple distribution locations and delivery methods is also going to help keep your costs down. Shipping mounting systems can be cost to consider when doing projects, and seeing that it's easily accessible and it's going to be shipped in a cost-effective manner is definitely going to help affect your bottom line for the positive. If you can choose a location that's going to be close to where you're working, you're going to see some increase in profit at the end of your project. Oops, there's another slide there. So to kind of wrap this conversation up again, choosing the right mix of technology with your mounting system and making sure that the manufacturer behind that's going to be able to support you out through the project is going to get you a system that's going to work for your project, and it's going to give you the result you're looking for, which is a happy and satisfied customer. Your satisfied customer is going to be your strongest marketing tool. Is often their neighbors and their friends are going to follow suit and see what type of benefits they're seeing from their system, and they're going to want to do the same. And we're seeing more and more of our customers growing on word of mouth business. And I think it's important that everybody make sure that they're going forward with their best foot forward and making their installations as structurally sound and as aesthetically appealing as possible. I think that's what we need to do as a whole to drive the solar market to the next level. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody's time. Here's our contact information. I'm sure we'll be answering some more questions. So back to you, Frank. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate your patience and your perseverance. We did answer a lot of questions while we were waiting for you to get back, but I do have one more particularly focused on roofing racking solutions. The question comes from Marshall, and he says, when the balustrades cover roofing material in drainage paths, water can stand and create biological growth, which then accelerates the degradation of the roofing. And also particulates do the same thing. So are there any evolutionary developments in the industry to protect against that?
Might be more of a question for me, Frank. This is Brian Wild.
Yes. Well, I was looking at Brian and Adam because you were both talking about roofing solutions, but Brian, go ahead, take it.
Okay, I just heard the balustrade that piqued my interest. Yeah, it's certainly important that the balustrade within the tray has significant drainage so the water doesn't build up within the tray, and then the tray itself shall be a small enough footprint to allow water to flow around it. It is very important. We've seen pictures of systems with growth around it. It's very important to make sure we're not interfering with the purpose of the roofing membrane itself.
Well, Adam, I have a question for you. You were talking about the aesthetics of racking systems, and I wanted to know, one of the things that I have really had trouble understanding as I've learned more and more about this industry, is the difficulty that homeowners associations have with the aesthetic look of solar. How important has it been for racking systems in particular to become more streamlined, and how is that helping meet the HOA requirements?
That's a great question, Frank. And I mean, leaning back to what I was discussing before, seeing more product that's kind of uniform, I guess, in color, such as a black system using a black module with a black frame and black clamps, is definitely helping address those types of concerns from homeowners associations. And I mean, we have seen some customers ask for systems that won't use some type of clamp or something, and that's also important to look at the mounting system and say, how can you get around that and deliver a product to the homeowners association that's going to be aesthetically pleasing and acceptable. And I think that most mounting systems out there are able, or at least quality mounting systems are able to adapt to that type of request and do some type of bottom-down mounting. And I think that it is going to become more and more of a point of interest as far as creating systems that are aesthetically pleasing, because solar is definitely something that is changing and evolving, and I think that it doesn't have to be some eyesore on somebody's roof anymore. We can make these installations look nice, and I think that that's where the industry's going.
Do you get the sense that has been the HOA problem, is that they think of solar installations as ugly and sort of as the technology was 30 years ago as opposed to where it's gone today?
I do. I mean, I think that looking at systems, exactly like you mentioned, from several years ago, and comparing them with the technology today, it's really kind of night and day. And the systems back then used to really jump out at you. You'd be driving along and see the solar system popping out. Now, oftentimes, there's different technologies out there, but they're often much more subtle and integrated with the actual customer's house itself. And I think that that is definitely something that's making it more appealing. It's not something that people are ashamed to have on their roof anymore, at least from an aesthetic standpoint. It is something that you can make look nice. And,
Bill and Brian, I got a quick question for you. Both of you talked about the integrated grounding in racking systems. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of where that came from and how that has changed the engineering of the product? Has it made the engineering of a product harder, or is it still? I mean, how much more difficult does it make it to engineer a product like that?
Go ahead, Bill.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, this is Bill. It's another variable that you have to have in your mind when you're designing a project, or a product, sorry. It is important from an overall cost of an installed PV system. So it's a variable where where it used to be common practice to run the lug and the copper wire, it is not really that common of a practice as far as from a ground mount standpoint anymore. Just the cost have driven so much, to reach. I think Brian had said, trying to get to grid parity. When you're trying to get to grid parity, you got to do everything you can to reduce the cost to make a better installation to hit that grid parity, and that's now part of that whole design parameters when you go into it. So it's just understanding what the UL requirements are, what the local AHJs are asking for, and designing that into your product.
I could also comment on the evolution. It's been interesting to see the solar evolve not only in the States here, but internationally. Some countries not requiring the equipment grounding, other countries more conservative like Japan, falling back to ground lugs and copper wire is the only way. And so it's very country centered, and within the United States specifically, we've seen the evolution from the copper wire and ground lugs, and then of course the Wiley, now Burndy Weebs taking over. And then there's a new evolution happening with 2703, where racking manufacturers are coming up with their own way to achieve integrated grounding, more integrated with the clamping mechanism itself, and less reliant often on weaves, even though weaves can be very helpful. So yes, it's certainly changed within the states over the last 5 years.
Well, we're running out of time. If the rest of you have any questions for Brian, Bill, or Adam, you can certainly send them to me at F as in Frank, Andorka, ANDORKA, at solarpowerworldonline.com, and I would be happy to pass them along and get you the answers you want. I'd like to thank Bill and Brian and Adam for all of their great insights, our attendees for their questions, and our sponsors for Hedicon Solar, Equilibrium Solar, and DPW Solar for their sponsorship of this webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for attending from Solar Power World. This presentation will be emailed to everyone later today and will also be available at www.solarpowerworldonline.com.